It's lesson 9, part 2, and we need to deal with the limitation of sessions. So we want to store our order object in a session variable, but by default, we're not going to be able to, which is going to be a problem. If we leave this page, that order is going to get wiped out. We're not going to have access to it. So there's a link up on D2L. It's in the week 9 folder. It's this store complex objects in a .NET Core session. So if you open that up, this developer's written a little extension library that has two methods, setObject and getObject. And basically it serializes, it converts our complex class to a JSON object. So it serializes it to JSON, and then when we call get, it reads it out of JSON. So what we want to do is use this library, and then we can call getObject and we can call setObject on our order. So in our project, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on my web project, not the solution at the very top, but just the project itself. And I'm going to add a class. And I'll call this class Session Extensions. Same name as in his library. So create the class as Session Extensions. And it just appears in the root of our project. Here it is down at the bottom. We're going to need to make a few changes to the class definition. We want it to be a static class. And then we're just going to copy those two methods, that getObject and set method, that are in his tutorial. So I'm just going to copy these methods into my class. So there's setObject and there's getObject. So we're just going to copy those methods as it is. I'll also maybe include the link. Okay, static is the same in ASP.NET that it would be in Java. Now I know you've worked with static classes before in Java. So what is a static class? What's the difference between a static class and a regular class?
Now I forget what the difference is.
Okay, anybody want to help us out a little bit? What's a static class versus a non-static class? Thank you, Leo. Exactly. So a static class does not need to be instantiated as an object, whereas a standard class, we would need to call the constructor to create an instance of that class. So we're missing a few libraries here. So for our JSON convert, we want to use this library called newtonsoft.json. This is the standard JSON parser for .NET. And then to access the I session, we need to reference microsoft.aspnetcore.http. So add both of those references. So you can see that adds my references on lines 1 and 2. Now I can save my class. Because our class is public and it's static, we can now just call the getObject and setObject methods. We don't need to instantiate an instance of this object. Has no constructor. It's just a code library with some public methods we can call on. So there's our class. It's in the root of our project right above the startup file. And now we want to call this setObject method so that we can pass in, we'll give it a key, we'll name our object, and then we can pass in our order to the session. So I'm going to go back to my store controller now. And we can access our session. So now notice we've extended our session and we now have a new setObject method that we didn't have before. So we're going to call setObject and we provide two parameters. The name of our object, we'll just call it order. So just a key that we can identify it. And then the object we're inserting, which is our lowercase o order. So this saves the order with all of the relevant information into a session variable. Later on, after the payment, the customer pays, we're going to need to call getObject on this to retrieve the order from the session and then save it to the database using Entity Framework. So now we've come to our payment. So we've got to configure our application to use the Stripe payment gateway. So the link for this, the reference is right here on D2L. Here's the link to register. I sent out this link earlier, so you want to create a free account. Here's the link to the .NET integration, and we can take a quick look at it. So Stripe has excellent developer documentation. You can see it's available. We've got documentation in all of these languages. And the first thing it wants us to do is to install the Stripe.NET Nuget package. So we're going to do that. So in Visual Studio, I'm going to open up my Package Manager console. And I'm going to run install-package stripe.net. I'll put the command in the chat. It's not case sensitive. So let's install the Stripe package. It'll download from the Nuget package library. It's not very large. So that's step one. Step two is we're going to go to our app settings.json. I'm not going to use the secret key store today, just so that it's a little simpler if I deploy to Azure. I'm going to go to my app settings.json, and I'm going to set up a Stripe section where we're going to get two keys from Stripe, a public key that will go in our payment form in the HTML, and then a secret key that will go in our controller so that it validates who we are, knows which payment account the payments are being made to. So down here, I'll just maybe put it after the Google section we had, I'll put in a comma, and I'm going to create a Stripe section. And Stripe's going to give us two API keys like most other services. They use different names. They give us a publishable key, which for the moment I'll just initialize as an empty string. And they give us a secret key. So the publishable key gets embedded into our HTML, so it's visible in the page source. The secret key, it lives inside our controller and our server-side code, so users never see it. Okay, so we'll add this section. You could use the key vault and the Azure configuration section. Just to keep it simple for now, I'm going to use appsettings.json. And then we're going to need to jump into the Stripe dashboard to get these key values. So add the section to your appsettings.json once you've installed the Stripe package, Stripe.net package. So I'm going to load the Stripe dashboard at dashboard.stripe.com. So we're going to log in here. You might be logged in already. It's now enabled two-factor authentication, so I'll just go and grab my email sign-in link. And Stripe's got a really intuitive, developer-friendly dashboard. This is a really common payment gateway. It's one of the world's biggest, and they give us a free sandbox to play in. So we can see everything here. Thanks. So I'm going to go to the developers link. So in here, I'll give you the link to the dashboard if you need it. And then I'm going to click on developers. And inside developers, we then got a link that says API keys. So we want to go here. Now I've already got a set of API keys. You may not. If you don't have them, they'll have a button to create API keys. If not, you can use the keys that are here. So here's my publishable key. It starts with PK_test. So if I mouse over that, I can copy that key to my clipboard. And then I'm going to paste it inside my app settings.json. I'm going to do the same thing with the secret key. And you're probably getting the sense, well, a lot of these APIs, they kind of work the same way. So I'm going to reveal my test secret key and copy it. Then I can hide it again. And I'm going to paste that in. So my secret key starts with SK. My publishable key or my public key starts with PK. So I'll just save those values. So generate your own keys, and you want to copy the publishable and secret key value one at a time. So notice it says I'm viewing test keys. I could toggle to view live keys. So I would have to activate my account. The great thing about the test account is we can put payments through and no credit card actually gets charged. We can just use fake credit card data. Once we activate our account, we put through payments, our credit card's actually going to get charged. So we don't have to worry about that when we're using a sandbox. Okay, so put in your two keys. And then we're going to need to configure our application so that our store controller can access the keys. There's a bit of a roundabout way of doing this in .NET Core. It's a little bit frustrating. In the old version of .NET MVC, our controller could just read our configuration values. But in .NET Core, we can't. So let's go to our controller. If I can get to it. So in our controller, we need to add a couple of references here. So first, we're going to use Stripe. And second, we're going to use system.configuration. This is to read the Stripe keys. So let's add those two references to our controller. So we now have to modify our constructor in order to read appsettings.json. We're going to have to pass in an instance of our configuration into our constructor. It's a bit clumsy. So our store controller is now going to depend on the site configuration. So we're going to modify our constructor here by also adding an iConfiguration parameter. So we're getting an instance, a reference to our application configuration. Now we need to define this up here. Oops, and this is going to be whoops. There we go. So we can no longer instantiate our store controller unless we also get a configuration object passed to it. Because we're going to need this configuration object so we can read our Stripe keys. So we're now going to need to modify our startup file, because right now when this controller gets instantiated, it's not going to receive it. It's configured to receive this, but it's not going to be passed it. If we run this right now, I think we're going to get an error. We'll try it. I'll go back to the store. But our controller's probably not even going to load now. Okay. Well, it still is. So now we need to go to our startup file and make a small modification in startup. So we'll open up startup. And in our services, we want to add configuration support for the store controller. So we're going to call this method called Ad Singleton, which is basically saying we're providing a service that's needed to implement something. So in order to run our store controller, we need to implement our site configuration that includes our Stripe keys. So we need to type iConfiguration. The code around this is complicated. I've put a link on D2L, which I will show you. We're not going to delve too deep into it, This is just sort of necessary plumbing so we can access our API key in the controller. The link for this is on D2L. So if you want to read more about this, there's a link here I've added about registering dependencies with Ad Singleton. So this article describes 3 ways we can add dependencies. With the Ad Singleton method we used, the add scoped, or the add transient. So different versions, and you can kind of read them here. This is a fairly current article from a couple of months ago. I'm not going to spend too much time going into the nitty-gritty of this. But this is all basically so we don't have to hard code the keys into our controller. Would be easier to hard code them into the controller, not really best practices. So we're going through this kind of convoluted way so we can read our keys. So now we can start to write our payment method. We'll need to write our get method first. So our controller's getting pretty long. So this will be get cart payment. So we are going to return a view. We're going to build a simple payment page. It's really just going to be a blank page, and Stripe's API is actually going to generate a mini payment form for us. We don't really have to do much. We just basically make a call to the JavaScript on Stripe, and Stripe will generate a payment page. The only things that we need in that page, Stripe needs to know what's the total amount of the order and what's the public key. So we're going to need to set those things up. So, whoops, we'll say so first we're going to read the order from the session. We put it in the session on our previous page. Now we're going to read it out. So we're going to call get object order. Oh, whoops, I have to cast it as an order. Now it's confused when I say order because there's 2 order classes. We have our own order model. Stripe also has an order model. So we want to cast it as our own order model. So then we're going to set out a total. This is kind of weird, but in Stripe, when we provide the amount of a payment, it wants it in cents. So if our order is worth $50, we have to send in 500 cents as the value. So it's going to be order, our order total, order.total times 100. So the Stripe charge amount must be in cents, not dollars. That's just how Stripe works. And then we'll also set our publishable key. So this is where we've got to read our I configuration. Stripe publishable key. So use I configuration to read key from app settings. So we have to know how much is the order in cents and what's the publishable key. And then we can load our payment page. So here's that method. And now we want to build the payment form. Now, most of the code we need here is right in the Stripe document. So we're going to create this page. So now under Views and Store, I'm going to add a view. It's going to be empty because most of the HTML here is going to come from Stripe. I'll show you where to find it. We'll create an empty view. So we're going to pick Razor View Empty, and I'm going to call it payment.cshtml. So in here, we'll put in an H1 that says payment. We'll put in an H4 maybe that says order total. And then we can use the view bag. Oops. We want to display the total amount of the order at the top as currency. So we'll use our string.format for the third time today. With our view bag dot total. I'm going to try this page out and see how it looks. Right now, it should just show me the total of my order. We'll give it a try. Reload my cart. I may have to refill it. And yes, we should also probably, I've got the same product in here twice as two different items. I won't worry about that for now. So I'll go to checkout. I'll fill out my checkout page. Okay, let's see what happened here. My checkout page didn't change. I'm going to rebuild my project. So I got the same error now up here. We have an order class. So this is why my changes didn't build. Up here on my checkout method, we've now got this ambiguity in our order class. Is this a Stripe order or is this our own beer store order? So I'm going to change this to be models.order. So this is our own order class we're creating on checkout. So that's why my changes didn't update. So we'll change that checkout to be our model.order. And now I'll try again. So go back to my cart. I would like a cart link in my nav bar, but for now this is okay. So here are the items in my cart. I'll go to payment. Okay. So when I display the payment, I need to divide by 100 because my order is $50.15. We're setting it up for Stripe in cents, but I'll need to fix that. So in my payment page, total divided by 100, I think will be better. I'm going to divide that by 100 and refresh. Okay, I guess I'll have to go back to my cart and start the process again. Now I click checkout. Okay. So we're where we want to be. We see our order total showing up. And now the form we need is going to get generated by Stripe. And I'll show you where to get it. In their documentation, blow it up and get the link. Somewhere in here is the form that we need. We'll go back to the top. Okay, setup and integration. Let's see, the development quick start. So we've installed our library. So here's Stripe elements for the web. Sorry, then move the documentation a little bit. I'll just put the link we can use in the chat. I'll do it in mine, and then I'll add it to the chat. So what we can use is just a simple JavaScript link. And we set the source to https checkout.stripe.com/checkout.js. So this script is going to generate the form. And our class will be stripe-button. And this is where we set out a few parameters. Our data key, we're going to use our public key, so our viewbag.publishable key. Our data amount is going to be our viewbag.total, and this is in cents. our data name. So this will just be the name that pops up at the top of the payment window. With the COMP2084 beer store. We can include a Stripe image here. I'll give you all of this to paste. The locale we'll set to auto, and we want to set the currency. I'm going to try this out in mine, make sure it works, and then I'll paste it in. So this should generate a little JavaScript pop-up payment page for us. I'm going to try it out and see. So really, everything's hard-coded except our key and our total. So I'll go back to the store. So I can go right to my cart page. I'll check out. So Stripe generates a little pay with card button. When I click, it uses JavaScript, takes our name, and it's got a bunch of test cards I can use. So for example, if I want to test Visa, I can use alternating 42, put in any expiry, it calls the Stripe API. So there's our payment. That's our credit card validation is happening. So let me give you all the code you need to call the JavaScript. So just put this in your form. And then we can write our checkout, our payment post method that's going to actually send the payment to Stripe, process the response so that we can then create and save the order and order details in our database. So instead of building our own payment page, we're using the Stripe API to actually generate the page for us. So our payment method, our payment post method is going to be pretty long. We've got to create a Stripe charge. We've got to send the payment attempt to Stripe and read the response. If it's successful, we want to create a new order, and then we want to copy all of the items in the user's cart to the order detail table. We then want to redirect the user and show them an order confirmation, which we can scaffold. Does anybody have any questions before we go back to our controller and start our payment post method? Okay, let's go to our store controller. We'll start on this method. So there's our get. And I guess also we should probably add authorize above the payment method. So you cannot load this page if you're not logged in. And now we're going to have our post cart payment. That's also going to be a private method. So we are going to create a Stripe customer. We're going to create a Stripe charge. We're going to save a new order to our database. We're going to save the cart items as new order details to our DB. And then we want to load an order confirmation page. Normally, we would also send an email, but we don't have a mail server right now. Actually, I guess confirmation, that's not going to be. What should we do with the items in the cart once we save the order to the database? We should do something with the shopping cart. So that'll be step 5. Once our order is paid for and processed and saved to the order and order details table, what do we do with all the items that are in the cart table for this particular customer? Right, Adam, we want to clear the cart. So we no longer need to leave them in the cart at this point. You got it. Okay, so we need some information about our customer first in order to generate the Stripe customer. So let's see, what do we need? We need a Stripe token, and we need an email. So the email we've already got with our user identity name. But our payment, so in our form we get from Stripe, in that little JavaScript form, it includes a field called Stripe token. We're going to need that to create the customer. First, we need to use our configuration and set the API key. So this is where we're going to read our I configuration with our Stripe secret key. So the publishable key is visible in our page source. Our secret key is not. So we're going to create a new Stripe customer. Okay, so we're going to need to add a Bear with me for a sec. Whoops, sorry. This is stripe.customer. So we're going to use our customer service. Customer create options. So our source is going to be equal to the token we get from our form. And our email is going to be equal to our user.identity.name. Okay, there's something it doesn't like here. An object reference is required. Bear with me. Okay. We'll try it this way. I may have to play around with this a little bit. Okay. I'm going to take a few minutes and figure out what I'm doing wrong. We need to take a break anyway. So we'll take a 10-minute break here and we'll come back and try to finish off our Stripe payment and our confirmation page in the last hour of class.